Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today I got a hopefully short video for you today. And I say hopefully because I really don't want this to be a long video for me to edit. So yeah, this is once again another lazy video. Don't worry, I got a bigger video planned. It's just if I want to keep a weekly basis on these videos, I gotta just make a bunch of filler videos and once in a while do a big edited video that I'm pretty proud of. But that doesn't mean I'm not proud of the stuff I do with these shorter videos. It just means I'm not putting as much effort into these videos than I am like my Ultraman Leo versus Evangelion video. I don't even know why I said versus. It's not a versus video. It's a comparison video, but whatever. Okay, we're not even talking about Ultraman or Evangelion. No, we are talking about this book right here. It is called Behind the Kaiju Curtain, written by Norman England, and I think, you can see the author's name right here. Yep, so let me tell you a bit about the book. The book itself, it is about the author Norman England, his time in Japan, specifically during the late 90s and early 2000s, where he gets to, share his experience with what goes on behind the scenes of some of our favorite tokusatsu films, including Gamera 3, Revenge of Virus, and GMK. And there's other two movies, but it's those two big ones. Those were my favorite movies that he talked about. And especially GMK. He really goes into GMK, probably because he was on set for every day of it. Anyway, that is spoiling the book. How dare I? No, so what I'm going to be doing for you all is just doing a, book review. And it's, again, it's going to be shorter than some of the other videos I made because unlike, say, a lot of other medium criticism like movies and TV shows and video games where you can pull footage and stuff like that. It's harder to do that with books, and except for like maybe art books like I did with my Toho Narita art book that I did earlier, which you can probably watch the video up here somewhere. I don't know. I don't know how YouTube works. But yeah, this is not exactly an art book. As you can see, there are words. Words! Run! Run away from the words! Ah! No, but another reason I really want to talk about this book is it's actually a really good book. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite books I ever read because it gives you such a great look into what it's like behind the scenes of these movies. Now, I kind of did this sort of like how I do my film podcast, where I split it up into likes and dislikes and then end up with my overall thoughts. However, for this video, I didn't bother to do kind of an even, 5-to-5 split. I instead did 4 likes and 2 dislikes because honestly, I really don't have much to dislike about this book. Before I talk about the book, let me talk about the author Norman England. Norman England, he is an independent filmmaker, photographer, and film journalist, at least according to Wikizilla, and also according to the book, as there is a bit about him in the book. In fact, there's a lot about him in the book, and I'll get to why in a second. But yeah, if you want to know more about Norman England, he is active on Twitter, and you can find interviews and live streams with him on YouTube. Just search Norman England on YouTube, and you'll probably find something. Especially look under, Kaiju Masterclass and Monstrosities Tokusatsu Vlog. Those are the two places I know there are videos about Norman England or are interviews with Norman England. The first thing I really like about this book is how it subverted my expectations. Now, Behind the Kaiju Curtain isn't the first kaiju book to ever come into the States, In fact, we got, just the past, 20 years. I know that that's not exactly a short time period, but give me a break, okay? We got August Ragoni's Eiji Tsuraya book. We got the Ishiro Honda biography written by Steve Reifel and Ed Godziszewski. And most recently, we got the book Godfathers of Tokusatsu written by J.L. Carosa. In fact, it is very recent. It came out earlier this year. And I am currently reading through it right now. So, maybe I'll do something when I finish that. Who knows? And also, I can't wait for volume 2 already. I've really enjoying that book as well. But anyway, this is about Behind the Kaiju Curtain, not Godfathers of Tokusatsu. That'll come later, I'm sure, when I need another filler video. But the point I'm trying to get is that while these books are great on their own, in fact, if you can find them in a good price, I know the Eiji Tsuraya book, I think that's out of print right now, so that might be a bit difficult, but the other two books, they're in print. You should be able to find them just fine. In fact, Behind the Kaiju Curtain, that's still in print as far as I'm aware. So, again, that should be easy to find. But anyway, everything outside Behind the Kaiju Curtain, while they are very informative, they are, they're a lot of, fact dumps. It's just, I don't even mean to say that in a negative, but it's it's talking about something that the author didn't experience themselves. So it just gives you the facts, when Eiji Tsuraya was born, or what Ishiro Honda's life was like in his childhood, or how, World War II is, an important part of the tokusatsu genre. While they are very interesting facts all alone, again, these are facts and stories that are not from the author's experience, so it's biographical in that sense. This is where Behind the Kaiju Curtain stands out, because this is from Norman's perspective. Everything in the book is from Norman's perspective. So I went into this book not knowing that. So my expectations were, oh, we're going to just kind of get you know, sort of factoids about some of the behind the scenes stuff of some of our favorite kaiju films from this era, maybe a deeper look. That's what I came in expecting. But what I got instead was a very, a personal experience the author had while being on the sets. So that alone, the subversion of expectations and being so different than the other stuff about the tokusatsu and kaiju genre we got in terms of books, it's a great positive for this book. It helps this book to stand out. And that goes into my next which is it is told from Norman's perspective. So we get everything from a first person point of view. Like I mentioned before, the previous books, they were sort of, third person. No, not sort of. They were, in a third person view. But here, it is first person. You are reading the experiences of Norman England. So it makes us feel more, attached to what's going on in the book, because we are inside the thoughts and emotions that Norman's feeling at the time, as Norman, writes us down in a journal style. But yeah, so that's something to mention about the book, is that it doesn't really have, traditional chapters like chapter 1, chapter 2. It has, a bunch of, dates. I don't know if you can see, a bunch of dates, right here, that kind of just break down sections of the book. That's pretty much how it's breaking up, because it's these are the journal entries Norman wrote himself during that time. So, it's So that makes it even better because it's not because we're humans. I assume, if I do have aliens watching this YouTube channel, great. How are you doing? Uh, don't don't invade Japan. Stop that. Japan has enough of that. But yeah, what I'm trying to get is that you know the great thing about these being the journal entries from the time, like that time period, being sort of a collection into this book. It's great and not something that was written, very recently, is because us humans have our memories tend to be skewed the longer and longer it goes. So, like, my childhood memories may not be what I remember might not be 100% of how the events went down, or vice versa. Like, our memories, as much as we think they are great, and sometimes, yeah, they are fantastic, they don't always capture the details, especially the longer the memory is. Like a memory, like my memory of yesterday, it will be much more vivid, say, than a memory that I had, 15 years ago. The third thing I like about this book is how it tells these very personal stories, and that it's not just about the movies. Don't get me wrong, the movies are very much an important part of the book, but it tells a lot of personal stories that might not have nothing or anything to do with the movies themselves. For an example, there's moments where Norman England is talking about how he's hanging out with Shusuke Kaneko's family and teaching his kids English, or just watching movies with Kaneko-san's family. Those are really interesting stories, and not something I expect in a book about kaiju movies. And I really appreciate it for that. And that leaves me onto the last thing that I'm going to talk about that I like about this book is that it is focused more on the people who make these movies. So like we get to hear, thoughts about from the actresses or the actors, the directors, the producers, but the greatest thing is that he talks about the experiences he has with a lot of the behind the scenes people, like the photographer of GMK, which, forgive me, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I will edit his name in the video. I am horrible with names. Trust me. I don't know how many times I had to re-record a video because I screwed up somebody's name or I forgot it. But what I'm trying to say is, we really get to see like a lot of the crew members, a lot of these random, a lot of random people that just might have been involved in the movie somehow, or might have no involve, blah, or might not have any involvement, of the movie itself, but knows one of the people from the movie. Like again, Shusuke Kaneko's family. So, I really love hearing their stories. I love hearing these little, onset stories and offset stories. It's really great. And again, it makes this book stand out. And it's one of the reasons, or if not the biggest reason, why I think this is my favorite book, about the kaiju genre. Apologies, that wasn't my final point. That was a part of the last point I ran. So scratch, that. And this was my final thing I like about this movie. No, that ties into the whole personal stories bit. So sorry about that. This is my real last thing I like about the movie or book. Sorry, I'm confusing my podcast with this review. Ah! Yeah. Oh, this video is going to be a mess. Anyway, the real thing I like about this book is that how it's written. So, like I mentioned before, this is a first person perspective versus most of the other books being a third person perspective. But what's really interesting about this book is how, like, not only is it written in a first person perspective, it is written sort of like a fictional like novel. Like the way Norman England writes a lot of these people and his experiences, it feels something you'd read off of a fictional tale or a fictional book or a fictional story, whatever. You know, and I mean that like in the best way possible. Not saying like, oh, this sounds so out of place that it's so like it does. This obviously didn't happen. No, it's more of like how it's set up, like narratively. Like there's a narrative going on with this book. In fact, this book actually follows an arc, surprisingly, even though, yeah, this is based on, like, this is, like, true events. Like, everything in this book, to my knowledge, unless Norman England's lying, which I highly doubt that, and I am definitely not accusing that. Oh, this is going to be bad out of context, isn't it? Anyways, what I was saying about the arc is that, even though the book is based off of true events, there is weirdly enough this arc that goes across the entire book. And that is the arc between Norman England and Shusuke Kaneko's developing relationship. And it's so interesting to read how that forms and blooms for them to become, just from, you know, Norman doing his job as a film reporter interviewing Shusuke Kaneko to them actually being good friends. It's it's so weird but interesting, and weird in a good way, like legitimately good way, because it's just I love the way it's written with this sort of narrative arc that goes across this book. I don't know if that was purposeful. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's accidental, but yeah, it feels like a narrative arc. So it's something I really like about this book. So it's not just like a boring. So today I did this and then this happened. No, it's told in such an interesting emotional way that gets you invested. A lot like how fictional stories and fictional books are written. Now, nothing is perfect. And like I said, I have two things that I dislike about this book. So yeah, sorry, this is where the criticism comes in. But don't worry, let's be honest, it's gonna be nitpicks. As much as I've praised this movie, that I probably don't have, any strong negative feelings about this book. But yeah, let me get off to dislikes right now. And the first one is not Norman England's fault, but it's still a bummer that we didn't get to see any of the set photos he took. And I say this as because in the book, Norman mentions that he's taking these pictures on sets, like he's a set photographer pretty much, taking still images and stuff like that. I think you can see some of them on his Twitter still, but he might have taken them down. Who knows? But I'm pretty sure you've seen Norman England's photos, around, not just from the book, but like from other stuff he did for Toho. I think most popular is that, like there's one picture from Godzilla, Godzilla against Megaguirus. I'll probably have the, you know, picture up here or whatever. I'll put that in post. But yeah, what I'm trying to get is that, you know, Norman England talks about all these pictures that he's taking, and it's like, man, I want to see these pictures. Yet there is no pictures of the behind the scenes in this book. In fact, the only picture we get is the cover. I hit my mic, but yeah, this is like really the only picture. It's a bummer. But like I mentioned, it's not Norman England's fault. In fact, like most things with Godzilla, it's Toho's fault. I think in the book, Norman mentioned this, or in some interview I heard. I don't remember. It's been a little bit since I read the book itself, but he mentions that he really had trouble with, you know, with Toho's, team. Like, Kadakawa was fine with the Gamera pictures. That's why Gamera is on the cover. They were fine with, Norman England sharing the Gamera pictures, but Toho they didn't give a definite no, but they weren't saying yes. Like, they were constantly dragging it out. Like, from what I remember Norman said in either this book or in an interview he did. But yeah, so because Norman couldn't get a definite yes or any sort of yes from Toho, legally he couldn't really, or he never got the okay to post the pictures. I don't know about the legalities, okay? I am not a lawyer. Trademark that. Don't trademark that. I don't know. Again, not a lawyer. And I think in the book, Norman mentions while he could have done the Gamera pictures, it just didn't feel right to have pictures of the one movie he talks about and not have pictures for the other movies he talks about. So yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get to see these photos, and I think it somewhat hurts the book. Maybe not. I'm mixed whether or not it really does hurt the book in any sort of meaningful matter. I don't think so, but I do think that as much as Norman talks about the photos he's taken, it's a damn shame we never got to see these photos, unless of course you go online and try to find them. And this is my second dislike, and it's probably the biggest criticism. It's the deal breaker, and that is I wish there was more. Yeah, so this is actually a good thing to dislike. So it's secretly a positive. Whoa, didn't see that coming, did you? You probably did. You probably. Yeah, I'm probably predictable. But seriously, when it got to the end of the last, you know, movie and he's talked about, conclusion of what has happened in the almost 20 years since. No, probably, I think by the time this book came out, exactly 20 years since, the last journal entry. It sort of runs down what he was doing after that and stuff like that. And not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind a sequel to this book about Norman's experiences, even if it doesn't have to do with, any major behind the scenes stuff going on. While that was cool stuff, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this book, I just got so invested into Norman's life in Japan. The stories he was able to tell. I was really invested, and I'm like, man, I just want to keep hearing more about these people. I want to hear more Norman stories. I want to hear what he does in Japan. This guy is really interesting. So yeah, I was left wanting more. And honestly, that is a really good thing to dislike. To wrap this all up, I'm going to give you my overall thoughts. And that is this book right here. It's a must read. Like, legitimately, not just if you're a kaiju or tokusatsu fan, but a must read for any movie buff or movie fan that wants to know more about what goes behind the scenes in these movies and the people who make them. And there is no other book like this, because this book manages to tell behind the scenes stories of the pretty secretive behind the scenes production of Japanese cinema. If you know about, you know, anything from Japanese companies, is that they tend to keep, you know, what goes on behind the scenes at a hush hush. Like, that's not just movies, that's video games as well. They don't really like to talk about, publicly what goes on behind the scenes unless it's like a documentary or something like that. It's not, they're pretty quiet about that. So getting such a first person perspective and such a pretty secretive industry, it's really a fascinating read. And again, I think it's a must read for anyone who's, interested in movies in general. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment to tell me what I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong. Leave a like if you love what Norman England is doing and you want to see more. Leave a dislike if you don't like kaiju and Japanese cinema for some reason, which I ask you, what are you doing on my channel? Like, genuinely, what are you doing if you don't like that stuff anyways? Weird. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. I talk about Ultraman. I got a Kamen Rider video I'm making right now, and that's still revolved around Ultraman. I also have my Saturday film podcast, John vs. Film. Make sure to check that out. And anyway, the most important thing you can do is to have a fantastic day. Take care and shoo watch!